Hi there, Nancy Mueller here, the one and only Life Sensei. I have a very good conversation with you to listen to today. My guest, Shelly, is going to be talking about choices, which is so apropos for this station, for this channel. And these choices include bariatric surgery, not bariatric surgery, to do it, not to do it, and what to do if you've done it. Shelly is the one to go to if you have questions. And so I'm really, really looking forward to our conversation today. And I invite you to stay with us and hear what she has to say. Shelly, welcome.
Thank you, Nancy. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and spend this time with you and your audience.
Well, I am so excited you're here. You know, I love you so much. And you are doing such amazing things, helping people to make better choices and to get over the fears through your WLS website. And I feel that you have so many answers to questions that are on the minds of people who are either thinking about having surgery or maybe have already gone through the surgery. And you know, we always need someone to talk to that's been through it, someone who can give us pros and cons, someone who's not trying to talk us into it or out of it. And I feel that you do this so eloquently, so I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Well, thank you. And I should add too, even beyond the weight loss surgery, I mean, it's something I had it over 17 years ago, and some would say, and for a while, I even thought that I failed at it because I gained back half of what I'd lost. I'd lost over 100 pounds, and it took time and it came on slowly, but I eventually regained half of what I had lost. And then I really spent years and years struggling with that. And it took me probably over a decade to figure out the mindset portion that you need to go along with it. So it's something I've been struggling with since I was a little girl. So I've definitely been through a lot of obstacles, and really hope I have value to offer people that are going through the same struggles, because it really can consume your life.
Well, you do. And normally at the beginning of the conversation, I always say, tell me who you are, what you do, and why you're so fabulous. And I'm going to ask you that question. But I have to say, in my opinion, one of the things that makes you so fabulous is the fact that you walk your talk. You've been there, you know, you've traveled the hero's journey, and now coming out on the other side, you are taking what you've learned, what you've experienced, the ups, the downs, the highs, the lows, the good, the bad, and you're just putting it all out there for people. And for that, I think that's one of the things that makes you so fabulous.
Well, thank you.
Yes. So I'm going to ask you now to share who you are, what you do, and why you're so fabulous.
Well, thank you. Let's see. So, who I am. I am a chick that has lived most of my life in an obese body. Uh, so, I have a unique understanding of people that struggle with body issues and their weight. My journey for me started as a young girl. In fact, I was put on my first doctor directed diet in third grade. And, this kind of this launched what we all know as the dieting yo-yo,
Yes,
because I
yes.
lost the weight, and then within 2 years I was on my next program. It was a little group called Fat Fighters for kids. I was on that in fifth grade, led by a nutritionist, and lost weight on that only to gain it back. I was on another doctor directed program by seventh grade. I think it was probably one of the first keto programs. Lost weight, and it was on to the next. I even did Weight Watchers summer camps, that were, you'd go to camp for weeks, and you'd be exercising all day long, and learning about food and how to eat nutritiously. And what was so fabulous about that was being around other people dealing with the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
um, which wasn't as common back in those days too. So it was really nice to be in that community. And then it just went on and on, the yo-yo. I mean, I tried just about most of the big name diets you've heard of. And then finally I got to a point in, well, I had my surgery in 2002, but 2001, I mean, I just got to the point where there was really a sense of desperation. I basically, I would go to work, kind of workaholic, work all day long, come home late at night. And that was my life. I stopped going out with friends because I was embarrassed and ashamed of how I looked. And not only that, I just didn't feel good. I was so unhealthy. I had a ton of comorbidities. And, you know, to be 32 years old and going to bed at night and wondering if you would wake up in the morning just because you could feel your heart about to beat out of your chest. You know, I had high blood pressure, borderline type 2 diabetes, and a whole host of other issues. And so it was really that point that I decided, hey, something's got to give. And when life is at a point where you're not getting much out of it or contributing in many ways, it's easy to take the risk. You know, any surgery has big risk. And my thought at the time was, well, what's the worst that could happen? I could not come out of the surgery. And, you know, the life I'm living now, I was just like, that's a pretty easy choice.
Right.
And so I had the weight loss surgery, lost 101 pounds in 6 months, and really had a new lease on life. I truly believe to this day that that surgery saved my life. But, you know, I stuck to the plan perfectly for a long time, but then the old habits started creeping in because surgery takes care of your anatomy, but it doesn't take care of what's up here. So that began a whole other journey of figuring out the mindset. And it took me a long time, but now that I have, and you know, it's something I continue to work on every day. I'm by no means perfect. I still screw up and make mistakes, but now my passion is to help other people that are struggling in that same place, whether they've had weight loss surgery and they're just struggling with finding who they are now, because it is a different life. You are not the same person you are yesterday. In fact, each day we evolve. So I help people finding themselves after weight loss surgery. And I also help people struggling with regain, because that's a battle I know all too well.
And you know, you're so right about the mindset part of it. I know that when I was introduced to my nutrition program and finally got healthy and shed some of the weight that I was carrying around, it was interesting because when I would go shopping for clothes, I would still find myself in the clothing sizes that was prior to the weight loss. And then I would put things on and I would look in the mirror and I would feel so disappointed. And I would say, I thought I was doing such great things for myself. Why do I still look so frumpy? Why do I still look so, ugh, you know, ugh. And it was funny because one time someone said to me, well, why are you wearing things that are so big? And I literally, I did not realize it. I mean, it just didn't look good on me and it didn't feel good on me, which is a familiar feeling. And of course, feelings, you know, are driving the bus for everything that we do. But it didn't occur to me that familiar feelings of not feeling comfortable in my clothing was what was keeping me in that clothing size at the department store. And then when I started going into the sizes that were actually mine, I said, oh my gosh, this actually looks good on me. I actually feel kind of good. And it's so amazing how we think that our reality is what we see, but it's not. Our reality is what we think.
Yeah. You know, I think our body images, we have so closely tied to our self-worth.
Yes.
And sometimes we have to realize that we're worthy of feeling good. You know, when we have these achievements, it's okay to feel sexy and be proud of how you look. And sometimes we're afraid of doing that because you know, we're almost made to feel ashamed of feeling good about ourselves. Like, oh, she's just too high on herself, or, what a snob, or this, that, the other. And it's a shame. So it's very tied to self-worth. But I mean, there's also issues of body dysmorphia. I mean, you'd be amazed of how many people have lost 100 or 200 pounds and they still see themselves as they were. And someone will show them a picture and they're size 4 or 6 or 8 or 10. And they're like, wow, sometimes just seeing that picture is an eye opener. And it's hard and takes some time for your mind to catch up with your body, and also to know it's okay to feel good about myself.
Absolutely. So, so we've talked a little bit about the mindset of weight loss, but let's talk about when you get to the point where, I know you touched on it, that you said, you were at the end of your rope and surgery just seemed like, what have I got to lose type thing. But what are some of the questions that you would have someone ask themselves if they were thinking about having the weight loss surgery? Because it's not just about, well, okay, I'm at the end of my rope, because maybe not everyone gets to that point, but they feel like they need to do something. I think that there's a lot more to it than just asking yourself, should I or shouldn't I? So can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I think some of the things to ask yourself is first, are you willing to commit to change? Because it all starts with a decision, and it's got to be the type of decision where you're willing to be all in, the type where, you flip on the switch and really have a shift in how you're thinking. And so you have to ask yourself, am I willing to commit at that level? Am I willing to learn new habits, go into this openly? Am I willing to put aside my stubbornness, or, maybe everything I think I know? Because a lot of people going into this, they've been at this a long time. Most people have been on the dieting yo-yo for years. And they've really got to be open to learning new ideas, because a lot of times we've been on it so long, we think we know everything, and we don't.
Yes.
So that's something I think people have to ask themselves. Am I open to new ideas? And, I find that there's 3 pillars. There's thinking, behavior, and environment. And I think people need to stop and think really hard. Am I willing to make changes to all these areas? Because it takes work to change your thinking.
Yes.
And it's like very slowly, like braces almost. It's like they're slowly adjusting your teeth, like little itty bitty changes at a time that over a long time add up to pretty significant change. But are you willing to change your thinking? Are you willing to change your behaviors? And sometimes it also requires a willingness to change your environment. Are you around people that are healthy for your journey? Are there things in your environment that are triggering certain behaviors? So people have to have a willingness to change more than anything, and they really have to look hard at themselves. Am I willing to do that? Because it's going to shake things up.
So do you think it's imperative to look at those 3 pillars prior to having the surgery? To really be honest with yourself about whether or not you can commit to change in those 3 pillars? Because, I'm of the belief that we don't know what we don't know. So it's easy to say, okay, I'm going to go skydiving. But until you get up in the plane and someone says, ready, jump, you're like, maybe not, So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's certainly helpful if people start exploring those areas ahead of time. But I mean, I wouldn't say it's a must do, because there's a lot of preparation that goes into gearing up for surgery. These days, hospitals and doctors have pretty extensive programs that it could be overwhelming to do both at the same point. But I think the sooner people do start looking at those 3 pillars, it creates the awareness that is needed for success, because until you really become aware of things, it's hard to make those changes. I think everything begins with awareness. It's really stopping to listen to the conversation going on in your head. You know, I think especially with a lot of people in this community, and a lot of people everywhere, we're so critical of ourselves.
Right.
And, you know, one of the things is to start just creating an awareness of those thoughts going through your head, because you can't start to change them to more positive conversations that will fuel success in your journey until you really create that awareness of what's going on and create that awareness of what behaviors are tripping me up. I mean, we all kind of know at a gut level, but sometimes I think you really need to stop and just be aware, you know, write them down, think about them, and environment too. It's just creating that awareness, because sometimes things are right in front of us, but we don't want to see them, or sometimes we just plain don't see them.
Mm-hmm. And what do you suggest if someone's in an environment where the people around them aren't particularly supportive?
Well, you know, that's a tough one. It, it's very, very important to surround ourselves with a circle that's going to support us in our journey. And, you know, it, I hear a lot of stories that are really quite sad from people that are not getting support from their family or their friends, and the relationships change. And so I think people need to really look at those relationships. I mean, if they're incredibly destructive relationships, people might need to rethink, is this something I really want in my life? But I think that's only in extreme cases. A lot of times it's, I think, building up other parts of your social circle. One, I think one thing that is incredibly important to the weight loss surgery community is staying with support groups, because then you're surrounded with people that are on the same journey as you. And a lot of times people, if they encounter struggles, they tend to step away from that because they might be embarrassed. Like, I know when I experience regain, I'm like, oh, I can't go to my support group because everyone's going to see that I'm screwing up. I was embarrassed. And I should have just gone, because that's where I would have gotten the help. So that's one, surrounding yourself with people that are in support groups on life journeys, but also staying connected with professionals that can help you in your journey. Because similar to my experience of disengaging for quite some time from support groups, I also disengaged from my surgeon, because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gaining weight. I was so ashamed. I'm like, here's this woman who I consider the woman that saved my life with this surgery. And I just felt like, oh my gosh, if I go, she's going to be so disappointed. And I was so embarrassed. But you need to keep those professionals in your lives. And, you know, there's other professionals too. It could be fitness trainers. There's specialists in, you know, emotional eating. I mean, there's all kinds of specialists. And you just kind of have to find the people that are going to be most beneficial in your journey. And then I think there's also, sometimes you need to add a new circle of friends that are more aligned with your new lifestyle. And it doesn't mean getting rid of the old friends, but it means finding more balance, like people that are really in alignment with where you want to take your life.
You know, going back to what you said about relationships, something that came up for me too is if you're in a relationship and you're not feeling supported in your decision for weight loss surgery, or even in a decision to be healthier, whether you choose to have the surgery or don't have the surgery, it's often difficult for people to take a look at that relationship because we don't want to admit that we're in a relationship where someone isn't, you know, doesn't have our best interest at heart, or where it's not reciprocal. You know, we say, oh, this person, I have to be with this person, I have to be with this person. So to look at it that way, it can bring up fear, like, oh my gosh, well, what if it ruins my relationship with this person, or my marriage, or my however you're in the relationship with this person. And that in itself can have so many contributing factors to, number one, whether you need the surgery, how you got to the point where you need the surgery, what you'll do after the surgery. Relationships are really key, I would think.
It's huge. And, I'll be honest, I know that there are people whose relationships do end. I see stories where spouses are like, you've changed, and I don't like the person you've become, and they just step away. And it's very sad to see that. But the one thing I would say is I firmly believe that we're living this life to become a better version of ourselves every day.
Amen.
And you can't cage yourself, lock yourself in a cage and prevent yourself from becoming and blossoming into the person that you're meant to be.
Right.
And I'm not saying to disregard people's feelings that you're in relationships with. I think it's important to talk things through and being very open through the process. But, I think what it comes down to is sometimes they're just as scared as you are. They're like, what if, they go through this and they don't love me anymore? Or, oh my gosh, she's so confident now. Why does she want to be with me? Or why does they start questioning these things, and there's a lot of insecurity. So I think, sometimes we're so focused on our journey, we forget to remember, okay, this is a big change for,
yes,
the people I care about too. So it's important to be sensitive to that. But there's also other people that, no matter how hard you try to work through it together, it doesn't always work. And I don't think you cage yourself and prevent yourself from becoming a better version of who you are because of someone else. Because if you don't show up your best self, you're not going to show up for others that you care about, if you're not working on becoming a better version of yourself.
And one of the things that's real important is, whatever it takes for the person making the decision to have the weight loss surgery, it's not their job or their duty to take on the fears, phobias, what ifs of their partner or people in their relationships. That's their stuff to do. Your stuff is only your stuff.
Right. You're exactly right. So often we worry about hurting people's feelings. And I even hear this around food issues too, like especially, right now we're close to a lot of major holidays that are surrounded by food. And I've actually had people say to me, well, if I turn these things down, I'm going to hurt their feelings.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's okay to put yourself first. You're not responsible for somebody else's emotions. As long as you're not going out there with ill intent to hurt someone,
right.
You can't take on that responsibility. You're coming from a place of good. Somebody else's emotions are their emotions. It's good to talk about them and be open about them, but you're not responsible for somebody else's emotions.
Yeah, it's just like 30 some years ago when I became a vegetarian. I can't tell you how many experiences I had where I would be with someone and they'd say, oh, well, try this. I made this. And I say, well, is there any meat? No meat. Chicken stock? Well, just a little. And then when you don't want to try it, they get all, upset. And you think, this has nothing to do with you. This is about my choices. So when we can all get to a point where we're dealing with just our issues, thoughts, and not taking on the issues and thoughts of others, oh my gosh, that is like a huge step for everyone being the best version of themselves that they can be.
Absolutely. And so often I think we do try to please other people. And, it's okay to put yourself first. We forget about that. We come from a place where so often we're putting everyone else ahead of ourselves, but I really believe we're truly probably in the long run hurting them more than helping them by not putting ourselves first.
Yeah. And it's like if you're in a relationship where the two of you are, couch potatoes, and then you decide that you want to be healthier, then your partner, still being a couch potato, feels left out. Like, well, you're not doing what we like to do anymore. You're no fun anymore, that kind of thing. Well, you're still fun. You're just a different kind of fun now. And
Yeah.
either, so it's a different vibration, right? And, like as you're leveling up in your health, you're vibrating differently. And when you're vibrating at a high level, that now people have a choice. They can either vibrate up to your level, or you can vibrate down to where they are when you're with them.
Yeah.
And when you have to lower your vibrational energy, it's heavy. It doesn't feel good. And so it's that constant flux of up, down, up, down. You have to decide. Every person has to decide, do you want to stay up here, or do you want to continually go up and down, up and down? And it's that up and down situation that you put yourself in that is so unnecessary
Yeah.
when you're being the best version of you.
Yeah, and I think a lot of resentment can stem out of that. Resentment not only towards the other person, but towards yourself too. Like, why am I doing this? This is not what I want.
Exactly. So, Shelly, tell me, how did you get to the point when you decided to be this? Do you call yourself a coach? Is that how you refer to it? A weight
Um,
loss surgery
I,
coach?
I think of myself as a right size living expert.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, and I should take a moment just to explain what I mean by right size.
Okay.
Um, I I am not a fan of any diet. I feel like they try to, one, they're focused on numbers, and they preach that, oh, today you're going to flip a switch and you're going to start eating 100% clean, and you're going to work out like a gym rat, and you're just going to change everything about your life in one day. And that's too overwhelming, and people can stick to it for a little while, but they eventually fall apart because they try to do too much at once. So, one, I have people focus on bite-sized changes, making one small change at a time till it sticks, and then you can add another. But they do so with a focus on becoming right size. I request that people don't focus on a weight goal or a size goal, because I don't think we should be defined by numbers. One, I mean, doctors might tell you, oh, you should be in this range of weight. Well, there's no one size fits all on any of those
Right.
charts. And then also, I think a lot of times we get numbers in our head, like, oh, I was this size for one hot second when I was 16, and I want to be that size again. And it may not be the right size for your body. So I have people focus on right size, which I define as a place where you look your best, you feel your best, but you don't feel hungry or deprived. It's kind of, I refer to it as your happy weight. And it's funny, when I talk about not setting a goal of the numbers, a lot of times people automatically assume that, oh, it's because I might set a number that's too low. Well, it's kind of funny, because in my journey to right size, when I initially thought of a number, it was the wrong number the opposite way, because I was focused on a process, just making one change at a time. And I had my number of, I thought I should be 150, because I'm like, okay, that was the only weight where I didn't feel like I was going to, bite someone's head off all the time and, feel like I'm starving all day. But because I was making these itty bitty changes and just following a process, which I think is a lifetime process, I kept going past that number. And my right size was almost 20 pounds lower than that number. So I hate numbers. So that's why I like right size. I think it's just the perfect term for where we want to go.
You and I had this conversation once where we talked about the numbers on the scale. And I said, I am a big believer in demolishing the scale, getting rid of it, throwing it out, not even having it in your house, because I know for my journey, you know, having a preconceived idea of what it meant to get healthier, I was always quite amazed that the size of the clothes I was in didn't coincide with what my belief of the number on the scale was. So the number on the scale might not move, but the size in clothing would go down. And it didn't make sense to me. I didn't understand that. And when I just said, all right, then I'm going to stop looking at the scale and just stop looking at the numbers, then it was just, what feels right. I just allowed myself to what feels right. And then also you're not in that daily mindset of numbers. We have had that conversation, and I know that it's, not trying to tell somebody what to do, or, don't anybody come and say, like, well, I believe blah, 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 I'm just saying for me, that's what I found to be the most helpful when I wasn't stuck on a number.
Yeah, well, and this will surprise you because this will seem very counterintuitive to what I just said, but I actually do step on the scale every morning, but I do so with no emotion attached to the numbers. To me, it's like the number is what it is. I do it solely for awareness because, as I mentioned, awareness is the key to everything. And by doing that, it's just I started to learn that, oh, if I do this, this might happen to the scale. And sometimes there's no rhyme or reason to it, but I do it with no emotional connection to that number. I look at it, I'm like, it's just data.
Right.
But I record that number just so I can learn patterns, and it just kind of helped me learn more about myself and get a better understanding. But I also caution people that if you can't separate the emotion from it, if you do weigh, I wouldn't do it daily.
So that's really great because you're teaching them awareness without the emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. And some people can't break that emotional connection to the scale, which I get. I've been there. I mean, when I started, regaining, once I surpassed the 10 pounds of regain after weight loss surgery, you better believe me, I tucked that scale away in a closet where I couldn't see it, buried under boxes. And I didn't want to see that thing. And it was like, anytime I had to go to the doctor, I dreaded it because I was like, oh, they're going to make me step on the scale. Except for I have one doctor that just asks me my weight. I'm like, I like this version.
Well, yes, of course. That's another thing entirely. If you're getting rid of the scale because you're in denial, that's not, facing what you really are wanting to face. That's true too. So again, what got you to the point where you decided to start doing this, to be, and helping people understand the right size? What got you to this point? Because, people go through this journey and they don't necessarily put something out there to empower others. So what got you to this point where you feel like, you know what, I have something really valuable based on my, hero's journey that I'm going to turn around now and pay it forward? What got you to that point?
Well, funny enough, I think part of it was age. Here I am talking about don't pay attention to numbers, but it was right before my 48th birthday, and here I was, I had 50 pounds of regain I was still walking around with, and I started thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to be 48 soon. And you realize how close that is to 50, and I was just kind of like, it's probably safe to say I'm more than halfway through this journey. And obesity is a prison. And it may not be for everyone, but I think it is for a lot of people. And I say it's a prison, and that we allow it to get in the way of what our dreams are in life. Mm-hmm. Because, there were these things I wanted in life, and it was always like, oh, I'll do that when I lose 20 pounds, mm-hmm. or, and not feeling confident in myself to go for these things because I was so tied up in my obesity. And so I was really pondering it very deeply, and I'm like, is this how you want it to end? if you're halfway there, is this how you want it to end with being in this prison? You either need to make a decision to live with yourself this way and be happy and not let it get in the way of your dreams, or you need to tackle this for once and for all so you don't have to spend all this time and energy on this cycle of up and down, you know, obsession with weight. So it was really just kind of a last ditch attempt. I was kind of like, you know, it's now or never. You either figure this out or live with it. And in doing that, I realized, okay, well, what's the one thing in common? You know, everything has been a cycle of failure in my weight loss journey. And what's the one thing that I keep repeating? Because, you know, oftentimes we keep repeating the same thing that
Right.
doesn't work. And the thing that wasn't working is what we have been taught for as long as we have been around, that all or nothing dieting approach, you know, the extreme. And so I just said, okay, I'm going to do this different. I mean, I know we all want to be what I call red carpet ready overnight, you know, where we're going to diet today and a week from now, we're going to be in that little black dress and strutting our
Yes.
stuff. And I was like, okay, I got to let go of the sense of impatience. And we're all impatient today. I think in the world we live in, we're so used to instant gratification. It was really coming to a point where I could let go of that and say, okay, just one change, just focus on one change. And that was really the turning point. But as I was really, you know, thinking this through very deeply and decided I was going to totally change the approach, try something new, I was like, you know, I'm going to do this publicly because there might be other people out there that can benefit from this. And it was really scary too, because there's that thought in my head, like, what if I fail again?
Right.
But I'm like, I'm just going to do it. So like, I actually did my first YouTube video. I can't remember if I had just started my first change or two, or if it was right before, but I mean, I basically declared on camera, hey, I'm doing this, and you know, come along for the ride. It's a journey we can share together. And that's really how WLS Delight and Bite-Sized Changes, it evolved from this. It just kind of took on a life of its own.
And I love that, because people then can actually, you know, look at your work and think about, I don't know, is she really, you know, honest in what she's saying? Can I really trust her? Does she really know what she's talking about? All you have to do is go back and look at the video footage. And, you know, if you, I know you're like me, where it doesn't matter, you keep every video you've ever done up, because, you know, we get better as we go along. And
Yeah.
I can remember, you know, when I first started doing videos, I was trying to get that whole, okay, start the video and, you know, step back and how do you do this and all this. And I have every video up because I want people to know, like, it doesn't matter where you start, just start.
Yeah.
And I love that, because now they can go back and they can look at your videos and they can see like this honest, raw emotion of where you were versus where you are now, and why you've put your heart and soul into this. And I will say the bravery and that comes from compassion in wanting to not only change your journey, but to empower others to change their journey.
Yeah, and you know, in doing this, I think in order to help other people, you really have to be able to shed a lot of the protections that a lot of times we put around ourselves, and be vulnerable, um, be open to criticism. And hey, I know I'm not doing everything right. You know, I'm not an all-knowing guru who doesn't make mistakes, and you know, there might be elements I have wrong, but I'm okay with that. And I realize I'm a work in progress, but I'm like, if I'm learning something new about myself every day and continually evolving and trying to become that better version of myself, it's like just going through that journey in front of people and hand in hand with people that are going through the same thing. It's like, hey, it's okay for them to see my mistakes. They'll learn from them too. Hopefully they won't have to go through them. And I think people just want to know that you're just like them too. I mean,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's, that's one of the reasons that I've created this YouTube platform, because it's to have conversations with real people who are just having a conversation about a journey, an experience, an up or a down, and how they've brought it forward and are empowering others or inspiring others or motivating others based on their journey. And you do this so eloquently. I mean, I've known you for several years, and I love talking with you. You always are, happy and upbeat, and I know that your heart, I just always feel like your heart speaks before your voice.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot for you to say that.
Yes, you're
And
so
it's
welcome.
funny. I came from a different place because, like, a long time ago, I really felt like, oh my gosh, I have to be perfect or whatnot. And it was really when approaching 48, when I really started to think things through, that I just realized, hey, do this, do it out loud, and just pull down all the blinders.
I think too, when we get to a certain age, and it doesn't, again, throwing out the numbers, because whatever that age is for whoever, but when we get to a certain age, we finally start caring more about ourselves and less about what others think of us.
Yeah.
And then we start to realize the value in who we are. And it's like, once you start to realize your value, you say, oh my gosh, well, if I'm not going to make different choices, then I'm not going to be able to step into this value that I now see.
Yeah.
And when you reach a certain age, whatever that age is, where you just say, yeah, I am more important than what other people think of me. What I think of me is more important than what other people think of me.
Yeah, it's very true. And it doesn't mean that it's not sometimes scary, to get there. And um, because you know that certain things you're doing may impact other relationships and whatnot, but it's okay to put yourself out there and be scared.
Yes.
I think change is scary for anyone. Even positive changes are scary because it just mixes up the whole dynamic of your life. But we need to take those risks to grow into who we're meant to be.
Right. Now, when you and I talked about having this conversation, I told you I was going to ask you the $1,000,000 question. So here it comes. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So if someone is considering having weight loss surgery, would you be for it or against it?
Well, I mean, I think the decision is different for everyone, but what I can tell you, that if I was back in the shoes of my 32-year-old self, I would do the same thing again. I know for my situation, I really believe in my heart of hearts that that surgery saved my life. Uh, and even though I gained back half of what I'd lost, I probably would have not just been 100 pounds overweight if I hadn't had the surgery. It probably would have progressed to 200. And I really don't think I would be here today. Now, some people have the surgery and um, they get the mind shift change right from the beginning. I mean, a lot of the programs out there are really trying to walk people through and give them the tools to be successful. But I mean, it's a constant job. I mean, we have to work on our mindset every single day. It's not something you can work on for a little bit and then put it aside and move forward. It's a full-time job. So some people make that transition well, other people struggle more. Um, but as long as you go in with it with the intent that, hey, I may not be perfect at this at first, but I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to be open to other people helping me and taking their suggestions. I think it could be a very good decision for a lot of people. People need to understand it's not a magic pill.
Yes.
A magic pill does not exist. A lot of people think weight loss surgery is an easy way out. It's certainly a very powerful tool that will give you it'll accelerate your journey to where you want to go, definitely, and can certainly help and control. But if your mindset isn't there, there are workarounds, and it can be complicated because when you have limited capacity for food, some people really struggle with, oh my gosh, I can only eat this little bit and I want a lot. So there's a lot of people are very frustrated that they can't enjoy food anymore. A lot of us can still enjoy it in smaller quantities, as we progress, but yeah, it's different for everyone. But if it was me making the decision again, I would do it in a heartbeat. If I had to go through that every single year, I would go through it every single year, just to like, if it was something that tool didn't last and you had to go in for, a surgical tune-up every year, I would do it without hesitation because it changed my life that much.
Fantastic. Shelly, I so appreciate you and your message and your, compassion to anyone who's thinking weight loss surgery, yes or no. The ins and outs of it, the ups and downs, the hearts of, the feelings and the emotions and the challenges and the fears, all of that. And I so appreciate that you have followed your passion and your bliss, and that you're paying your experience forward to help others who are making this life-changing decision. And it can be life-changing whether you say yes to it or no to it. So, there is no right or wrong, and you're giving people the opportunity to believe that with all their heart. There's no right or wrong answer. There's only the answer that's right for you. And I really appreciate what you're doing for everybody.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate people being open to be on this journey with me, because nobody should have to go it alone, and nobody should feel just separated from the world, which a lot of times we do feel when we don't feel good about ourselves. There are people out there that understand what you're going through and can help you along the way. And for anyone who does connect with my message, it gives me no greater pleasure than to help people that are where I once was. I want to help everyone break free from the chains of obesity so that they can go forward, live their best life, and make their dreams come true.
Fantastic. Shelly, tell people how they can get a hold of you and where to connect with you, please.
Okay, sure. There's a couple places. If people are just interested in exploring some information, I have a YouTube channel, which is WLS Delight. WLS is the acronym for weight loss surgery, for anyone who's not aware, and then Delight, DELIGHT. And then I have a website, which is WLSDelight.com. And there's resources on the website, and also links to other videos. And I'm having a very exciting guest blogger who's going to be on there soon, that's going to give us some insight to emotional eating. So lots of great stuff coming up on there.
Fantastic. Thank you. I love it, because you're meeting people wherever they are. And that's a beautiful place, because sometimes, people need to stalk, other people before they're ready to actually, say, okay, I'm looking for some answers. They need to stalk behind the scenes. So that's wonderful. Yeah. Shelly, thank you so much for having this beautiful conversation with me. I really appreciate you being here.
Well, thanks, Nancy. I enjoyed our time together.
Me too. And for all of you listening or watching, please subscribe to our channel. Share this, leave us some comments. Let us know what you got out of this. What are your thoughts? Because when you take the time to leave some comments and subscribe, it lets other people know, like, oh, okay, maybe this is worth listening to. And you just never know how one conversation between two people could really open up a world of difference for someone else. So please subscribe, like, share, leave us some comments. And in the meantime, this is Nancy Mueller saying ciao for now.